Dramily.com, unlimited drama series.
The basement smelled like sawdust and betrayal. I was crouched behind the water heater, rewiring the main electrical panel at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, when I heard my wife Sarah's voice drift down through the heating vents, like poison through clean water. "Don't worry about him, Bradley. My idiot husband thinks I'm at that legal conference in Chicago. He's probably down there playing with his little wires, completely clueless." Her laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. I'd heard that laugh directed at me plenty of times over our 12 years of marriage, but never quite like this. Never with such pure contempt. I set down my wire strippers and listened harder. God, I can't wait to get out of this dump. When the divorce goes through, I'm keeping the house just long enough to sell it and take every penny. Then it's goodbye, blue-collar loser. Hello, real life. My hands were steady as I reached for my phone and started recording. 23 years as an electrician teaches you to keep calm when things get dangerous. High voltage will kill you if you panic. "The prenup won't matter," Sarah continued. "I've been documenting his drinking, his anger issues. My firm knows exactly how to handle men like him. He'll be lucky if he gets supervised visitation with Emma." That's when my steady hands started shaking. Emma was our 16-year-old daughter, the only good thing to come out of this marriage. The idea of Sarah using her as a weapon made my vision go red around the edges. I climbed the basement stairs like a ghost, each step calculated to avoid the creaks I'd memorized over the years. The house was dark, except for the glow from Sarah's phone in the living room. She was sprawled on our leather couch, the one I'd worked overtime for 6 months to buy, wearing the silk nightgown I'd given her for our anniversary. "I have to go," she whispered into the phone. "He might come up soon. But Bradley, tomorrow night at your place. Wear that cologne I like." She hung up and immediately opened her laptop. I watched from the hallway as she deleted her call history, then opened a document titled Incident Log, Domestic Concerns. The first entry was dated 3 weeks ago. Subject came home intoxicated, raised voice when questioned about whereabouts. Complete fiction. 3 weeks ago, I'd been stone sober, working late on the Henderson electrical job. Sarah knew that. She'd complained about me missing dinner. I memorized every word I could see on that screen before retreating to the basement. My workshop had always been my sanctuary, but now it felt like a bunker. I sat on my workbench and stared at my phone, at the recording that had just blown my world apart. Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, attorney at law, pillar of the community, mother of the year according to her Facebook posts, was planning to destroy me. The smart play would be to confront her, demand couples therapy, try to save what was left of our family for Emma's sake. But as I sat there in the dark, listening to Sarah's heels click across the hardwood floor above me, I realized something that probably should have scared me more than it did. I didn't want to save our marriage anymore. I wanted to win. Wednesday morning arrived with the kind of gray drizzle that makes everything in our Rust Belt city look like a crime scene. Sarah left for work at 7:30 sharp, same as always, kissing my cheek and telling me she'd be late because of client meetings. "Don't wait up," she said, adjusting her Hermes scarf. "This Henderson Industries case is going to trial soon." I nodded and smiled like the clueless husband she thought I was. "Good luck, honey." The moment her BMW disappeared around the corner, I was in motion. First stop, our home office, where Sarah kept her personal laptop. She'd changed the password recently, but I'd watched her type it enough times to know it was Bradley 2024. Subtle as a brick through a window, her email history was a masterclass in deception. Dinner with clients that were actually hotel reservations. Working late that was actually shopping for lingerie I'd never seen her wear. And Bradley Whitmore, senior partner at her law firm, married father of 2, pillar of the community. The photos they'd exchanged made my stomach turn. But I saved everything to a flash drive. If Sarah wanted to play dirty, she'd picked the wrong electrician. My next stop was Gus Kowalski's office, above the pawn shop on 5th Street. Gus was 65 years old, built like a fire hydrant, and had spent 30 years as a cop before the department forced him into retirement. Now he made his living digging up dirt for divorce lawyers and insurance companies. "Well, well," Gus said when I walked in. his office thick with cigarette smoke despite the no smoking sign on his door. Tom Morrison. Heard your wife's making quite a name for herself at that fancy law firm. That's what I need to talk to you about. I laid out everything, the phone call, the fake documentation, the affair. Gus listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes in a spiral notebook that looked older than Emma. Bradley Whitmore, he said finally. Yeah, I know that piece of work. Handles all the high-dollar divorces in town. Real shark. Also real stupid if he thinks nobody's noticed him playing house with junior associates. What do you mean? Gus opened a filing cabinet and pulled out a manila folder. Your wife ain't his first rodeo, Tommy boy. Man's got a pattern. Finds ambitious young lawyers, promises them partnerships, takes them for a ride, then dumps them when the next pretty face shows up. Difference is, your Sarah's married. Makes it messier. He slid a photograph across the desk. Bradley and Sarah at Romano's, the expensive Italian place downtown. Sarah was wearing a dress I'd never seen before. When was this taken? 2 weeks ago, Tuesday night. Wasn't that when she said she was working late on the Henderson case? It was. I remembered because I'd ordered pizza and watched the game with Emma, who'd complained about her mom missing dinner again. Here's what I'm thinking, Gus continued. We document everything. Every lie, every meeting, every penny she spends on this affair. Build you a case so solid her fancy law firm won't be able to spin it. How much? For you? $500 a day plus expenses. But Tommy? He leaned forward, his expression serious. You sure you want to go down this road? Once we start digging, there's no putting the dirt back in the hole. I thought about Sarah's fake incident log, about her plan to use Emma as a weapon, about 12 years of marriage to a woman who thought I was too stupid to notice her betrayal. Start digging. That evening, Sarah came home at 10:15 with takeout from Romano's. She'd eaten there without me, then brought me leftovers like a consolation prize. How was your day, honey? She asked, settling onto the couch with her laptop. Same old, same old. Fixed Mrs. Peterson's ceiling fan. Finished the wiring at the new medical building. Nothing as exciting as your client meetings. She didn't even look up from her screen. I watched her type, wondering if she was messaging Bradley, planning their next rendezvous, crafting more lies about her dangerous, unpredictable husband. Sarah? What? I love you. That got her attention. She looked at me with something that might have been guilt, or maybe just annoyance at being interrupted. I love you too, Tom. The lie came so easily, I almost believed her myself. By Friday, Gus had enough evidence to sink a battleship. Photos of Sarah and Bradley at 3 different restaurants, 2 hotels, and a jewelry store where Bradley had bought her a tennis bracelet that cost more than I made in a month. Credit card receipts showing she'd been using our joint account to pay for her affair wardrobe. Phone records proving she'd lied about working late at least 15 times in the past 2 months. But the real bombshell came from Gus's contact at Sarah's law firm. Your wife's been playing a longer game than we thought, he told me over coffee at Mel's Diner. Turns out she's been moving money. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger alerts, but it adds up. Looks like she's been planning this divorce for months, maybe longer. He slid a bank statement across the table. Our joint savings account, the one we'd been building toward Emma's college fund, had been systematically drained. $25,000, moved in increments of $2,000 and $3,000 over the past 6 months. Where did it go? Offshore account in the Caymans, real sophisticated stuff. She's been getting advice from someone who knows how to hide assets. Bradley Whitmore. Of course. There's more, Gus continued. She's been building her case against you for almost a year. Got statements from neighbors about your erratic... behavior. Claims you threatened her last Christmas. I remembered last Christmas. Sarah had spent the entire day on her phone, ignoring Emma's excitement about her presence. When I'd asked her to put it away for family time, she'd accused me of being controlling. Later, she'd told her sister I'd exploded over nothing. She's good, I admitted. I'll give her that. Good enough to take you for everything you've got if you don't play this smart. The question is, what do you want to do about it? What I wanted was to march into Sarah's office and expose her in front of her colleagues. What I wanted was to call Bradley's wife and play her the recordings of their pillow talk. What I wanted was to make them both pay for treating me like I was too stupid to matter. But Emma was at school and Sarah was at work, and I had a business to run. So I did what I always did when the world got complicated. I went back to work. The medical building job was nearly finished, just some final connections and testing. It was mindless work, the kind that let me think while my hands stayed busy. By the time I finished, I had a plan. Sarah came home that night with Chinese takeout and a story about working through dinner. She was getting sloppy with her lies, or maybe she just didn't care anymore. Either way, it made what I had to do easier. Emma's spending the night at Jessica's, she announced, settling at the kitchen table with her lo mein. Some school project they're working on. Perfect. I'd been wondering how to get our daughter out of the house for what came next. Sarah, we need to talk. Something in my tone made her look up from her phone. About what? I pulled out my own phone and played the recording from Tuesday night. Her voice filled the kitchen, talking about her idiot husband and her plans for the divorce. I watched her face go through a series of expressions: surprise, anger, calculation. Tom, I can explain. Can you explain this too? I showed her the photos Gus had taken. Sarah and Bradley at Romano's. Sarah and Bradley at the Marriott downtown. Sarah and Bradley shopping for jewelry with my money. She set down her chopsticks and looked at me with the coldest expression I'd ever seen. You had me followed. I had my wife investigated. Turns out there was plenty to find. You son of a bitch. She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. You actually hired some sleazy private investigator to spy on me. I hired someone to document your affair and your theft. $25,000, Sarah, from Emma's college fund. For just a moment, she looked like she might deny it. Then her lawyer instincts kicked in. That money is half mine. Not when you steal it to fund your affair. Not when you hide it in offshore accounts. And definitely not when you're planning to commit perjury to take everything else. I showed her the fake incident log, the one I'd photographed from her laptop. Her face went pale. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to end this affair. You're going to return every penny you stole. And you're going to stop building a fake case against me. Or I'm going to make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of person you really are. Sarah stared at me for a long moment. Then she started laughing. You think you can threaten me? I'm a lawyer, Tom. I know exactly how to handle men like you. You want to play hardball? Fine. But you're going to lose everything. The house. Emma, your pathetic little business. By the time I'm done with you, you'll be lucky if you can get a job changing light bulbs. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Where are you going? To Bradley's. And Tom? Don't wait up. The door slammed behind her, rattling the windows. I sat alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the ruins of our Chinese dinner and our marriage, and realized that Sarah had just made a very big mistake. She'd declared war on someone who'd spent 23 years working with dangerous things in dark places. Someone who knew that the difference between getting the job done and getting killed was attention to detail. Someone who was about to show her exactly how much damage a blue-collar loser could do when he put his mind to it. Saturday morning, I started fighting back. My first call was to Bradley Whitmore's wife, Jennifer. I'd found her number in the phone book. Some people still believed in landlines. She answered on the third ring, sounding cheerful and unsuspecting. Mrs. Whitmore, this is Tom Morrison. I think we need to talk about our spouses. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, I'll meet you at Starbucks on Elm Street in an hour. Jennifer Whitmore was nothing like I'd expected. Where Sarah was all sharp edges and designer clothes, Jennifer was soft-spoken and dressed like a suburban mom. Which, I supposed, she was. But her eyes were intelligent, and when I showed her the photos of her husband with my wife, those eyes went hard as diamonds. How long? She asked quietly. At least 2 months that I can prove. maybe longer. She studied the photos like evidence in a trial. He's done this before. I always suspected, but I never had proof. I'm sorry. Don't be. She handed the photos back to me. I've been planning my own exit strategy for years. This just makes it easier. We talked for another hour. Jennifer was a paralegal before she married Bradley, and she knew exactly how divorce worked in Ohio. More importantly, she knew her husband's weaknesses. He's arrogant, she told me. Thinks he's untouchable because he's the senior partner. But the firm has a morality clause in their partnership agreement. Sleeping with junior associates violates it. Would they really fire him for that? If it became public? In a heartbeat. The firm's built on family values and community trust. A sex scandal would cost them millions in lost clients. By the time we parted ways,
It was one time at the company retreat.
Your coworker posted a photo. You're wearing this shirt.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
we had an alliance. Jennifer would document Bradley's assets and get copies of his financial records. I would keep gathering evidence of the affair, and when the time was right, we'd destroy both of them together. My next stop was Sarah's sister Michelle, who lived across town in a subdivision that tried too hard to look expensive. Michelle had never liked me, thought Sarah had married beneath her station. But she also had a weakness for gossip and a grudge against Bradley Whitmore. He represented my friend Carol in her divorce last year, Michelle told me over wine on her back patio, charged her $50,000, and then hit on her at the settlement conference. Real piece of work. I showed her some of the tamer photos, the ones that proved the affair without being pornographic. Michelle's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Sarah's always thought she was so smart, she said, always looking down on everyone else. Maybe it's time she learned what it feels like. What do you mean? I mean, I know every gossip in this town, and they're all dying for a good scandal. Give me 24 hours, and everyone from the country club to the PTA will know exactly what your wife's been up to. It was petty. It was vindictive. It was exactly what Sarah deserved. Do it. By Sunday evening, my phone was ringing constantly. Friends, neighbors, even my mother-in-law, all calling to ask if it was true about Sarah and her boss. The gossip network in our town was more efficient than the internet. Sarah came home Sunday night looking like she'd been through a war. Her perfect hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, she'd been crying. You bastard, she said the moment she walked through the door. You told everyone. I told two people. They told everyone else. My career's ruined. The managing partner called me into his office this morning. They're suspending me pending an investigation into my relationship with Bradley. What about Bradley? They fired him, effective immediately. 20 years with the firm gone. I should have felt sorry for her. This was my wife, the mother of my child, and I'd just helped destroy her career. But all I could think about was Emma's college fund and Sarah's fake incident reports and the contempt in her voice when she called me an idiot. You did this to yourself, I told her. I just made sure there were consequences. She collapsed onto the couch, still in her work clothes from Friday. What do you want, Tom? Money? I'll pay back what I took. You want me to end it with Bradley? It's already over. The man won't even take my calls. I want a divorce. A fair divorce. No lies, no fake abuse claims, no trying to poison Emma against me. We split everything 50-50, we share custody, and we both move on with our lives. And if I say no, I pulled out my phone and showed her a video Gus had taken Friday night. Sarah and Bradley in the parking garage of his condo building, screaming at each other about whose fault it was that they'd been caught. Sarah slapping Bradley, Bradley calling her a psychotic bitch, and driving away, leaving her stranded. Then I released this to the internet, along with all the other evidence I have. Your law license, what's left of your reputation, any chance you have of rebuilding your career, gone. Your choice. Sarah stared at the phone screen, watching herself fall apart in high definition. When the video ended, she looked up at me with something I'd never seen before. Respect. You really had me fooled, she said quietly. I actually thought you were too stupid to figure it out. I know. How long have you known? About the affair? A week? About you planning to destroy me in the divorce? Same time. About you thinking I was an idiot? 12 years? She flinched like I'd slapped her. I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers, she said finally. Fair split, shared custody. But Tom, after this is over, I never want to see you again. That makes two of us. She went upstairs to pack a bag. I heard her on the phone with her sister, arranging a place to stay. When she came back down with her suitcase, Emma was with her. Our daughter looked confused and scared. Dad? What's happening? I looked at Sarah, waiting to see if she'd try to poison Emma against me one last time. Instead, she surprised me. Your father and I are getting divorced, honey. It's not your fault, and it doesn't mean we love you any less. We can't live together anymore. Emma started crying. I wanted to comfort her, but I also wanted her to understand that this wasn't my choice. Sarah was the one who'd blown up our family for a man who wouldn't even take her calls now that the heat was on. Why? Emma asked. Sarah and I looked at each other. For just a moment, we were united in wanting to protect our daughter from the ugly truth. Sometimes people grow apart, Sarah said finally. Sometimes they become different people than they were when they got married. It wasn't the whole truth, but it wasn't a lie either. The Sarah I'd married 19 years ago never would have stolen from her own daughter's college fund. The Tom she'd married never would have systematically destroyed someone's life, even if they deserved it. Maybe we had become different people. Maybe that was the real tragedy here. After they left, I sat in my empty house and wondered if I should feel guilty about what I'd done. Sarah's career was in ruins. Bradley had lost everything. Half the town was talking about the scandal. But then I thought about Emma's college fund and Sarah's plan to use our daughter as a weapon and the fake incident reports that could have sent me to jail. I didn't feel guilty at all. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a process server who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Sarah had kept her word. Everything was fair and straightforward. 50-50 split of assets, joint custody of Emma, no alimony either way. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt empty. Winning a war against someone you used to love doesn't feel like victory. It just feels like waste. Emma was struggling with the whole situation. She was spending weekdays with me and weekends with Sarah, who'd rented a small apartment across town and was working as a contract attorney for a firm in Columbus. The gossip had made her unemployable locally, but she was slowly rebuilding her career. Dad, Emma said one evening over dinner, why did you and Mom really get divorced? We were eating pizza and watching a cooking show, trying to maintain some semblance of normal family life. But Emma was 16, not 6. She deserved better than the sanitized version we'd given her. Your mother had an affair, I said simply, with her boss. When I found out, I gave her a chance to end it and work on our marriage. She chose to fight dirty instead. Emma stared at her pizza. Is that why everyone at school keeps looking at me funny? My heart broke a little. I'd been so focused on making Sarah pay for what she'd done that I hadn't considered how the scandal would affect our daughter. I'm sorry, Em. I never wanted you to get hurt by this. But you wanted Mom to get hurt. It wasn't a question. Emma had inherited her mother's intelligence and her father's ability to see through bullshit. Yeah, I admitted. I did. Good, she said quietly. She deserved it. That surprised me. Emma and Sarah had always been close. What do you mean? Emma put down her pizza and looked at me with eyes that seemed too old for her face. Dad, I knew about the affair months ago. I saw her texting with him. I heard her lying to you about where she was going. I kept waiting for you to figure it out. Why didn't you tell me? Because I hoped she'd come to her senses and stop. Because I didn't want our family to break up. Because I was scared you'd blame me for not saying something sooner. I reached across the table and took her hand. Em, none of this is your fault. Not the affair, not the divorce, not any of it. Your mother and I made our choices, and we have to live with the consequences. Do you hate her? I thought about that. Did I hate Sarah? I hated what she'd done. what she'd planned to do. I hated the way she'd looked down on me, the way she'd stolen from Emma's future, the way she'd been willing to destroy me to get what she wanted. But hate was exhausting. I was tired of being angry. No, I said finally. I don't hate her, but I don't trust her, and I can't forgive her. Sometimes that's enough reason to end a marriage. Emma nodded like that made sense to her. Are you going to be okay? Are you? I think so. It's weird, but it's also kind of a relief. The house feels more peaceful now. She was right. Without Sarah's constant tension, her phone calls and late nights and barely concealed contempt, our home felt like a sanctuary again. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday in November. Sarah and I sat in a conference room at her new lawyer's office and signed papers that dissolved 19 years of marriage in 30 minutes. We were polite to each other, businesslike, like strangers completing a transaction. The house sale should close next month, Sarah's lawyer said. After the mortgage and fees, you'll each get about $60,000. We decided to sell the house and split the proceeds. Too many memories, too much history. Emma and I were moving to a smaller place across town, closer to her school. What about the college fund? I asked. Sarah reached into her briefcase and pulled out a cashier's check for $25,000. I'm paying it back with interest. She slid the check across the table. Our eyes met for just a moment, and I saw something that might have been regret. Thank you, I said. She nodded and looked away. After the lawyers finished their paperwork, Sarah and I walked out to the parking garage together. It felt strange, this formal ending to something that had started with so much hope. Tom, she said as we reached our cars, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not about Bradley. I'm not going to pretend I didn't care about him. But I'm sorry about the way I handled things, the lies, the money, the way I treated you. Why? I asked, Lynn, why did you do it? She leaned against her car and stared at the concrete ceiling. Because I felt trapped. Because I married you when I was 22 and didn't know who I was yet. Because I built this whole life that looked perfect from the outside but felt like a prison. So you decided to burn it all down. I decided to take what I thought I deserved. I told myself you'd be fine, that you were too simple to really get hurt. I was wrong about that. Yeah, you were. You're not simple at all, are you? You're just decent. And I forgot what that looked like. She got in her car and drove away, leaving me alone in the parking garage with a check for $25,000 and the strangest feeling that we'd both finally told each other the truth. 6 months later, I ran into Bradley Whitmore at the hardware store. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing clothes that had seen better days. I'd heard through the gossip network that he was working for a small firm in Akron, making a fraction of what he used to earn. Tom, he said when he saw me. He looked like he wanted to run. Bradley. We stood there awkwardly, two men who'd destroyed each other's lives over a woman who wasn't worth it. Look, he said finally, I know this doesn't mean much, but I'm sorry. About Sarah, about your marriage. I never meant for things to go that far. Yes, you did, I said. You meant for it to go exactly that far. You just didn't mean to get caught. He flinched. You're right. I did mean it. She was exciting. Smart and beautiful and ambitious. Everything Jennifer wasn't. And now Jennifer's remarried to a guy who actually loves her. And I'm alone in a studio apartment wondering how I threw away 20 years of my life for a woman who won't return my calls. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. You made your choice, I told him. We all did. I bought my supplies and left him standing in the electrical aisle, looking lost among the wire, nuts, and junction boxes. Emma graduated high school that spring with honors and a full scholarship to Ohio State. At the graduation ceremony, Sarah and I sat together in the auditorium, proud parents putting aside their history for their daughter's moment. She's amazing, Sarah said, as Emma walked across the stage. She gets that from her mother, I replied, and meant it. Sarah looked at me with surprise. Even after everything? Even after everything. You're a lot of things, Sarah, but you're not a bad mother. We watched our daughter accept her diploma, and for just a moment, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with Sarah Morrison all those years ago. She'd been brilliant and driven and full of dreams. Somewhere along the way, those dreams had curdled into resentment, but they'd been real ones. After the ceremony, the three of us went to dinner at Emma's favorite restaurant. We talked about college and career plans and everything except the war we'd fought over our daughter's childhood home. It was almost like being a family again, except for the careful distance we maintained and the things we didn't say. I'm proud of both of you, Emma told us as we walked back to our cars. I know the divorce was hard, but you didn't make me choose sides. A lot of my friends' parents couldn't manage that. Sarah and I looked at each other over our daughter's head. Maybe we'd gotten one thing right after all. That night, I sat in my new house, smaller than the old one, but mine, and thought about the past 2 years. Sarah had rebuilt her career in Columbus and was dating a doctor she'd met through friends. Bradley was still struggling in Akron, his reputation in ruins. Jennifer had remarried and seemed happy. And me? I was running my own electrical contracting business, making more money than I ever had working for someone else. Emma called me every week from college. I'd started dating a teacher named Lisa, who thought my job was interesting rather than embarrassing. I wasn't the same man Sarah had married, or the same man she'd tried to destroy. I was harder now, more calculating. I'd learned that sometimes good people have to do terrible things to protect themselves and the people they love. But I was also free. Free from Sarah's contempt, from her lies, from the constant feeling that I wasn't good enough for the life we'd built together. The war was over. We'd all paid a price for it. But in